Coming up on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, Chris Cermak has a rare manifestation of sarcoidosis, hypercalcemia.
It's when you have your calcium level is above normal. Normal range is 8.5 to 10.3. Mine has been as high as 14.5, and above 14 is considered a medical emergency, where you're in that above 14, you can die from too much calcium.
Like many people, Chris had a long road to diagnosis.
He says, "Do you know why you're referred here?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, because you are in stage 3 kidney failure.
This is the Sarc Fighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hello, everyone. This is episode 150 of the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. I am your host, John Carlin. Happy to be here with you today. Date of this recording is November 3rd, 2025. I received a nice email from a listener who found the podcast, and I just want to share a portion of it. It says, "Good evening, John. My name is Bassem Karim. I was diagnosed with pulmonary sarcoidosis on June 5th of this year, 2025. To say that I have been depressed about it is an understatement. I have granulomas in my lymph nodes, in my lungs, my right armpit, my hip joints, and my right kidney. My sarcoidosis was found as an incidental finding on a CT scan when I went to the ER in May for a completely separate issue. At first, during that ER visit, I was told that I had lymphoma of some sort. Needless to say, I was scared beyond belief. I've gone through the standard gamut of testing, scans, and biopsies, all confirmed sarcoidosis. I've said all of that to say this. I just came across your podcast, and it has made a difference in my understanding of our disease. I've had to try and find a new normal, which has been very hard because everything has happened so fast. So much so that now I'm on oxygen at night when I sleep because my oxygen drops too much. My emotions have run the gamut as well. Fortunately, I'm getting better. The area of Northeast Tennessee where I live, there are no support systems for sarcoidosis. I live in Roan Mountain, Tennessee, just slightly north of Johnson City, near the North Carolina border. I have a great team of doctors and will also be going to the sarcoidosis clinic at Vanderbilt. I'm currently taking 20 milligrams of methotrexate per week with folic acid daily, 2 types of inhalers, and oxygen at night. Coming across your podcast has helped me feel like I'm talking to someone who understands what I'm going through. I don't feel so alone anymore, so thank you, sir, for putting your journey out there for others to hear. It really means a lot. Sincerely, Bassem Karim." Well, thank you. When I say that this podcast is here to help the Sarc world, that's what I mean. Hope, perspective, and stories from other people who have their own unique situation, but with all the parts that seem common to all of us, right? It's different from all of us. It's the snowflake disease, but there are all these commonalities, the difficulty with diagnosis, and then the side effects from the medicines, doctors who sometimes don't know what to do with us, and then living with a disease that makes us all search for that new normal, one that unfortunately typically is not as good as our old normal. So Bassem, I hope I'm saying your name right, Bassem, thank you so much for reaching out and allowing me to share your story here on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, and perhaps you can join me as a guest one day soon. Now, before I get to today's guest, Chris, I do want to share a little bit about my recent trip from Virginia to Chicago for the FSR Gala, which was wonderful. Our friend Royce Robertson from the podcast was there. You may know he's been on the show multiple times. He and I have ridden bikes together, and he's done some fundraising, some bicycle fundraising for sarcoidosis. So I got to check in with Royce again. And then I met Scarlett and her mom, Emily. They were just on in episode 145. Scarlett's We're calling her the youngest sarcoidosis patient ever. She's gone through a lot since she was a child, and now she's a freshman at Ohio State and just getting her sea legs as a college student. But it was really nice to meet her and her mom, Emily, and lots of other people who have appeared on the show, people from the diagnostic world, the clinical world, if you will, and also, of course, from FSR. A lot of folks there that I know because I talk to them all the time, but had only met them in person once or in many cases not at all, even though we've been on Zoom many, many times. So really, really good to have done that. And then speaking of that, prior to the gala, we had an in-person board meeting for the board of directors. And can I just say that meeting in person is so much better than Zoom meetings? There's so much value to talking to people before and after the meeting, standing in the buffet line for breakfast or for coffee, just chatting about life or maybe some ideas that aren't necessarily agenda worthy, but they merit conversation with someone else in the sarcoidosis space, just trading ideas and trading thoughts and telling each other stories. And I learned a lot about how the organization is taking the fight to sarcoidosis on so many fronts. When we're talking about patient outreach, we're talking about research, relationships with pharma companies, and with the government in particular. So there's so many things that FSR was doing, so many pillars, so many fronts that we're fighting this battle on. And there was a lot of talk about the success of the what we're calling the FMLA clarification, which makes it so people in clinical trials can participate without losing their jobs, and also the Ignore No More campaign, which basically says, look, we know African American women most likely to get the disease, least likely to get the treatment they need. We can't ignore that statistic anymore. So that's out there. But back to the FMLA clarification, there was just a lot of talk and a lot of kudos all around the table for the staff who were really the ones that drove this. And we just finished a two-part series on that here on the Sarkfighter podcast. So go back a couple of episodes and you can hear all about how FSR was very instrumental in making it so people can participate in clinical trials, no matter what disease they have, without fear of losing their jobs. So go back and give a listen to that. Just a lot of really, really good, positive stuff. By the way, I did, during the board meeting, also have a moment to express my concern on behalf of patients that it can be difficult to find doctors who will work as part of a care team, especially when some of the team may be remote. Say there's a medical center where there is more of a sarcoidosis clinic, and you may not live near that center. The specialist is far away, the local doctor is local, and you need them to talk to each other so you can coordinate your care, and that's not always easy. By the way, I'm sorry if you hear Dougal scratching behind me. If you hear a jingling sound, that's Dougal scratching his collar. But Dougal, that should go away pretty quickly. I'm sorry about that. I also felt that the other board members heard me, and they agreed. And some of them are physicians, so they agreed that it can be a problem. Then that night, the gala was amazing. It was held at the Union League Club in Chicago, and that was a very warm and engaging space. Sometimes you get in these big centers with a stage, and it's not really warm and engaging, but this place really was. It almost felt cozy for such a big room. About 200 people there, patients, physicians, pharma companies, supporters, the FSR staff, which was amazing. It's like they were everywhere, and the FSR staff deserves a huge set of kudos for pulling this off. So many details, so many people to take care of, and then the show itself was absolutely wonderful, came off without a hitch, and that's not easy to do. So, again, I just want to say that. And I told you in the previous podcast that I'd be making a presentation, and I did, to the executive producer of the Netflix show No Good Deed, in which a key character believes he's dying from sarcoidosis, and that went well. And then we had a celebrity MC, Gerald Prescott Galian. She's a fellow Sark fighter and actress, so beautiful, so distinguished, and just has so much poise and presence. It's hard to explain it, but as they say, you know it when you see it, right? Some of the people honored, we honored Congressman Danny Davis of Illinois, who has shepherded many sarcoidosis-related initiatives through Congress, too many to mention. Walgreens was honored for activating several campaigns in the past year. They had a point of sale promotion, you're checking out, do you want to round up, that kind of thing. And then they also helped FSR get a seat at the table at the Walgreens Clinical Trial Day event. And they also helped FSR get N95 masks to people fighting the California wildfires last year. And what we're hoping to do there is because there's a lot of connectivity between people who inhale smoke at these fires and then cases of sarcoidosis down the road. So hoping to prevent triggers for sarcoidosis. And Walgreens was very instrumental in helping us distribute those N95 masks. And then finally, we honored Dr. Elliot Krauser of Ohio State with the Distinguished Leadership in Sarcoidosis Research Award. And he has done so much to advance our collective cause that it's hard to quantify. And I'll just read a little bit of his bio from the program. Distinguished pulmonologist and critical care specialist at Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, an FSR Global Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance member. He's been a board-certified pulmonologist for 30 years, during which he sustained a research lab to investigate sarcoidosis through NIH and other extramural support. And since 1998, he's led a multidisciplinary sarcoidosis and other granulatomatous lung diseases clinic that's recognized by the World Association of Sarcoidosis and Other Granulatomatous Disorders, that's WASOG, by the way, as a sarcoidosis center of excellence. In addition, Dr. Krauser played a lead role in establishing the first ever official American Thoracic Society clinical practice guidelines for sarcoidosis, and he contributed to the most recent comprehensive review of sarcoidosis published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And then it goes on to talk about his prestigious positions: current chair of the FSR Scientific Advisory Board, current ex officio member of the FSR Board of Directors, president of the America's Association for Sarcoidosis and Other Granulatomatous Disorders, chair of the American Thoracic Society, and then it goes on and on and on. And so if there was anybody who was ever deserving, it was Dr. Krauser. And I wasn't going to read all that, but then I thought, this is a person who's dedicated his whole life to this. He has been very successful. He is one of the people in the world who is an epicenter of sarcoidosis care all by himself. And he just gave a funny and enlightened acceptance speech. It was very warm. It was very down to earth. It was charming. It was not at all full of jargon or any of those things. And that's just really who he is. And that's what I mean about being in the room as opposed to like a Zoom meeting, that conversation that doesn't happen if you're not standing around drinking a cup of coffee. And for me, although it is becoming more common because of the podcast and my role on the board, it still blows my mind that that morning I was just chatting away with one of the top researchers in the history of sarcoidosis as we were standing there. We had each gotten our coffee and the meeting hadn't started yet, and people were milling around. Some people were just arriving, and I'm standing there talking to Dr. Elliot Krauser, getting his perspective on his 30 years of research, and it was just really nice and enlightening to be able to do that. So a whirlwind couple of days. I had 2 hours on one day, and my wife Mary and I traveled to Chicago with me. So we went upstairs on the first day to the gym, and we rode exercise bikes because that's what we do, and the weather was just absolutely terrible. The next day we did sneak out for a short walk to, I can't remember if it's Millennium or Millennial Park. I think it's Millennium Park in Chicago, and the big attraction there is something called the Bean. If you've never seen it, it's this huge sculpture, big enough that you can walk under it, and it's shaped like a bean like a navy bean or something like that, but it is reflective. So it's completely mirrored, and then it reflects the skyline all around you. If you stand underneath it, you get your own reflection. If you stand right up close to it, you get your own reflection. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's the second time that I've been to the bean. I was in Chicago for a wedding, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And that was the first time I had seen it. And when I found out the hotel was within about a mile walking distance, that was something we had to do. So just a couple of little things in Chicago. It was a lot, but all of this helps inform what's happening here on the podcast. And so coming up next, we've got a great guest today, Chris Cermak, and his unusual case of hypercalcemia.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter podcast. Welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. Joining me now is Chris Cermak from Chicago. And Chris, you have a very unusual type of sarcoidosis. Tell us about hypercalcemia.
It's when you have your calcium level is above normal. Normal range is 8.5 to 10.3. Mine has been as high as 14.5, and above 14 is considered a medical emergency, where you're in that above 14, you can die from too much calcium.
So this is too much calcium in your blood.
Yes.
All right. So how does sarcoidosis do that? And it's pretty easy for me to understand. Sarcoidosis goes and attacks your spleen or something, and there's a whole granuloma there, and the granuloma is not supposed to be there. It damages your spleen. How does it do that in your blood?
It's the same thing. It's your immune system attacking, and the granulomas, and something to do with the T cells that attack it, I believe, and then it also messes up with your vitamin D 1.25. I don't know if you've gotten a blood test for that. So
I probably haven't paid any attention to my vitamin D.
Yeah, so I have it makes high vitamin D, which then also influences your calcium level.
So
to my understanding, I don't completely understand the mechanism of it myself. I've been reading on it many times.
Yeah. This is something that I'm going to need to research, or maybe I can, through my contacts at FSR, maybe I can find somebody who understands this a little better. So how did you first start feeling badly? What did you notice? What was different? What was wrong?
In thinking it through, I went back to 2019. Heather and I had been up to upstate New York on vacation, and I noticed that I was very thirsty and going to the bathroom a lot. And I had this tingling sensation in my feet that I just kind of called restless leg syndrome, because I didn't know what to call it otherwise.
Sure.
So I came home and I started researching those symptoms, and everything said was pre-diabetes. You're eating too much sugar. So I cut sugar out of my diet completely one day, and everything went away. And I was good until 2023. Now I stopped. I didn't go back to eating sugar. So I got those symptoms came back again, and that was late August, early September of 23. And the restless leg thing was just horrible. I couldn't sleep at all at night. I would get like an hour or two of sleep,
Hmm.
And finally, I went to the doctor, and my primary care doctor was on vacation. So I saw his physician assistant, and we went through some stuff, and we got a blood test. And then she messaged me the following day and referred me to a nephrologist, which I'd never heard of. I didn't know what a nephrologist was, the kidney doctor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I make an appointment with him, and he was a really cool guy. This tiny office, still private practice, just him, no receptionist, no nothing. And he says, "Do you know why you're referred here?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "You're because you are in stage 3 kidney failure." And I was like shocked. I was like, "What? What?" Like, because I feel fine. I don't have any other symptoms. So he says it's because your calcium is so high. So as your calcium's being really high, makes your kidneys are in overdrive to try and get rid of it, and they can't. So that's why your kidney function is low. So he's like, usually this is caused by your thyroid. Your thyroid regulates your calcium, and he's like, you unfortunately, because you're going to have to go to the emergency room because your calcium is too high and you can die from this. So I was like, oh, okay. So I went home and I told Heather what was going on. I said, I'm gonna go to the emergency room. It's just 2 L stops, the train away. I said, I'm gonna be there for a while, so I'm just going by myself. So I went there, and there was probably 50 people in the emergency room that night, and it said a 4 to 6 hour wait. So I was like, I'm not gonna wait that long. So I went back in the morning, and I walked right in. There was nobody there.
Okay.
So
So you were feeling perfectly fine, except you're supposedly in stage 3 kidney failure
yeah, and the restless leg
and the
was giving
restless
me
leg.
no sleep. Otherwise, I felt totally fine.
Okay.
So I go in there, and the nurse is talking to me, and the triage nurse, and she says, "So what's wrong with you?" And I says, my nephrologist sent me here. Says my calcium's high. So she looks at my blood test, and she's like, "Oh yeah, it is high." So I go in, send me right into a room, and the doctor comes in, and they're talking to me and asking me questions and stuff, and started me on an IV and some drug to lower the calcium. Um, then they did a chest X-ray, and they wanted to do an ultrasound of my kidneys, and a lot of interns came in and residents and other doctors, and they all seemed to be surprised that I didn't have any. I hadn't really no symptoms other than what I was feeling fine. So I ended up having to stay there overnight. Because it takes a while to knock the calcium down. And then I was on a heart monitor for the entire time. They wanted 24 hours of my heart rhythm. They wanted 24 hours of urine. I did the kidney ultrasound, and they tested my thyroid, which came back negative. So uh, they were kind of scratching their heads, but they were kind of hinting at this is probably some type of cancer. And the one doctor was saying it's probably malignant bone cancer. So, as you
You
can
said
imagine,
malignant bone cancer,
yes,
like out loud.
yeah, as you can imagine, that's like a slap in the face.
That's
I'm sure
scary. Yeah.
you know that feeling from your experience.
Yeah.
Uh, so they wanted me to stay another day. I stayed 24 hours so they could get all their stuff, and and I'm checking my blood tests because they're taking blood tests all the time, and my calcium had gone down. I said, okay, I'm leaving today. They want me to stay another day, and I was like, I'm not. So they're like, follow up with your primary care physician. So I was like, okay. So I left, and I made an appointment with my primary care, and I went back to see him the following week, and we were talking about stuff, and I said to him, I said, hey, correct me if I'm wrong. I see all these blood tests and stuff, and I'm not a doctor, but I can figure out what they're saying. And I says, there isn't anything in these blood tests that points to cancer, correct? And he's like, yes, you're correct. We have no diagnosis for you. Nobody knows why you have this calcium problem. So I was like, okay. And he's like, so what I want to do is do these tests. And I says, okay, so you're on a fishing expedition. And he was like, yeah, I don't really like that analogy, but yeah. And I says, all right, I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to eliminate stuff.
Doctors don't like it when when you say, I mean, they can admit that they don't know what's going on, but if you call it a fishing expedition, they don't like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right, right.
So that was in mid October. So, this is also my first foray into the healthcare industry and the insurance industry. And so I'm learning about that as I'm going along, the whole scheduling of tests and doctor's appointments and things like that I don't have any knowledge of. Uh, so, he schedules, I get an ultrasound of my kidneys, echocardiogram of my heart, ultrasound of my gallbladder, my pancreas, my liver, CT scan of my entire body. And this is all over about a 3-month time frame. And but also I'm worried that I get a blood test now every several weeks, and I see that the calcium's slowly going back up. So I don't want to end up going back to the emergency room and dealing with what I did before. So I was messaging back with his assistant, and I kept asking her, I says, is there a treatment for or a drug or something I can take to keep this calcium in line, and so we figure out what's going on? And I really wasn't getting anywhere with her. She just kept telling me to go back to the emergency room. So I was like, well, I'm going to see the kidney doctor again. I'm going to ask him. So I posed the same question to him. I said, hey, I'm worried. I don't want this calcium to get too high and go through what I went through before. Is there a treatment or drug or something for that? And he had said, oh yeah, that's great that you're thinking about that. He goes, absolutely. You get a shot of a drug called Prolia, which will keep your calcium in check for a few months. And it's like, great. He's like, so in between, I'd also, after all these tests, my primary care physician, he had messaged me and said, I want you to he referred me to a pulmonologist, endocrinologist, and an oncologist. So I had set up appointments with all them. And my kidney doctor said, I see you're seeing an endocrinologist. He can set that up. So I was like, oh, okay, great. So
How many days off from work are you having to take through all of this? And this is like every doctor in Chicago.
I mean, considering my schedule, it's not bad because I can schedule them at like 1:30, 2 o'clock.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's not
you
problem.
work, that's right. You work an early shift.
Right. So after 1 o'clock, I can go to my doctor's appointments.
What do you do for a living? Are you an engineer? What do you do?
I'm a building engineer.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, the doctor's appointments weren't hard for me to make, but they're sometimes, as you know, they can be out weeks, if not months, to get an appointment. So it was coming into February now, so I go to see the pulmonologist now, and he says to me, he says, so I'm looking through your scans and everything, and he goes, I've noticed that your pulmonary lymph nodes are enlarged.
Hmm.
He goes, two things. It can be cancer, or it can be something called sarcoidosis. And I was like, what is that? So
Right.
he explained
Exactly.
it to me.
Sarcoid what?
Why I think it's sarcoidosis is because you have hypercalcemia, which is a symptom of sarcoidosis. It's not common, but it is a symptom, and it's not usually a symptom of cancer. I said, oh, okay. So he's like, they explained to me that the way we have to prove that is we have to do a biopsy, and explain me the whole process of going down to my lungs and taking a sample of that. And I said, okay, let's do it, because like everybody, I want a resolution to this. I want to know what the problem is. I can't live with high calcium. So so he's like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. We'll get it set up pretty quickly, probably be the following week. And I says, okay, great. So then the following 2 days later, I went to see the endocrinologist, went over the same thing with him. And I had asked him about something for the calcium. He's like, yeah, he set me up with um, an injection of this Prolia that would keep my calcium in line for probably about 4 months. So that was on, I saw the pulmonologist on Monday. I saw the endocrinologist on uh, Wednesday. And then I had set up the biopsy for the following Friday. And then that Friday, I got a call from my father who lives in Wisconsin. He's 84, and he asked me to come up, which he's never ever done before. So I it's like, yeah, I'll come up tomorrow. And when I got there, he was in bed, and he'd had diarrhea and hadn't eaten anything or drank anything in like 2 weeks. So I had to took him to the emergency room, and he was, his kidneys were completely shut down. And they were like,
Hmm.
we have to send him to Madison, to the big hospital. And he was in intensive care for a couple of days. And then uh, in a less of a critical room after that. But I was like, oh my God, like I have to. So I had to put my biopsy on hold for a little while. I said, I have to get the shot for the calcium. So Heather came up on Monday and she's like, well, I'll go to the hospital with your father and you can go to Chicago and get your shot. So I drove to Chicago and got the shot and turned around back, drove to Wisconsin all in one day. And then my father was getting better and he was going to be in rehab. So I scheduled the biopsy for the following Friday. So then I went in and got the biopsy. And afterwards, he had told me that, you know, it was indeed sarcoid,
Hmm.
but they were sending out the sample to an independent lab to get another opinion. And he had called me then a couple days later to say, yeah, they confirmed that it was sarcoid. It's like, so come in, make an appointment, and come in. We'll talk about treatment. So that was my experience, which in hindsight, after listening to some of your podcasts and your story, is not it's not near as bad as a lot of people seem to be.
I
Although,
don't know. That's pretty bad. I mean, you had to see a bunch of specialists. You had to go back and forth. You're dealing with your father being sick. There's this shot, and I mean, and this is. I mean, I have a rare form of sarcoidosis, but I'm going to have to look and see. Like I'm in the 1 percentile range. You've got to be in the 1 percentile range also, just based upon what I've heard about this. You hear lung function pulmonologists, cardiologists, cardiosarcoidosis, but you don't hear a lot of blood-related sarcoidosis at all that I've
well,
heard.
it's apparently in my lungs, but
So
I
it's in
have
your
no
lungs,
breathing.
but it's causing.
It's causing the calcium problem, yes. And I have no other symptoms. I have no breathing problems. I don't have any fatigue, nothing. That's was perplexing to
Very
some of these
puzzling.
doctors that they couldn't,
Uh,
because I had nothing else except for the calcium problem.
so you would describe yourself as a fit person?
Yes, yeah, yes, I think so. I probably could not be more active, um, considering with my job, and I'm like you, I'm a biker, so I
Okay.
bike to work 6 months out of the year. That's 10 miles a day, um, and I'm active otherwise. So yeah, I'm pretty active person, and I have no problems, breathing or heart problems or anything like that that a lot of people do with the pulmonary. Although from reading about it, it seems that it runs the gamut from very mild to very severe also.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully for me in learning about this, it doesn't get any worse, that I don't have any breathing problems or heart problems or eye problems that some people seem to come down with.
Yeah. So your diagnosis happened how long ago from right now?
That that was about a year and a half ago.
Okay. So you're looking at 18 months, and did they start you out on prednisone, or are they doing something specific for this for the hypercalcemia, that one drug that you said. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the name of the drug you took, but
The drug, I mean, I think it's the trade name of it is called Prolia.
Prolia. Okay.
Prolia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went back to see the pulmonologist, and we talked about, okay, prednisone is the first line of treatment, and he prescribed me prednisone. But it took I said, I'm not going to take this unless the calcium comes back. And I didn't know how long that shot was going to last. And it ended up lasting probably 5 months.
Okay.
Um, so it came back in like the end of June of that year. So I then started the prednisone, but I'm in a lower dose, 20 milligrams was where I started. And I think that was 30 days of 20. Um, 30 days of 15 and then 10 and then 5. Um, so I really did not feel, with the exception of maybe sleep, I don't think I felt any side effects of the prednisone, but I think in 20 and 10 is a fairly low dose.
Yeah, I would
Uh,
say it is. I would say it is
so
compared to some others that I've heard for sure.
yeah, so I went through a couple rounds of that, and finally my pulmonologist was like, he referred me to a rheumatologist because he's like, yeah, I treat sarcoid, but you have no lung problems, so I'm gonna push you off on a rheumatologist. So now I'm with the rheumatologist, and we did one round of prednisone. And last year, February, March, April, I don't know, my calcium didn't seem to be a problem, but then it came back in the summer, and we had talked about, we can't keep doing the prednisone. However, the prednisone works really well with me. Like it will knock the calcium down. 20 milligrams of prednisone will knock the calcium down in a few days. So I don't have to take it long term.
Hmm.
But he's like, you can't keep taking that. So we talked about two other ones, hydroxychloroquine
Hmm.
and methotrexate.
Yep.
So he's like, okay, we'll try the hydroxychloroquine. So I did that for a month, and I got another blood test, and that did not work with me at all. So went back for another couple weeks of prednisone and also started the methotrexate. So that's recent. Five, I'm maybe 5 or 6 weeks now in the methotrexate. So we're trying that out. So you know, we're in the trial and error phase with the methotrexate. So we'll see what happens from that. So I'm on 15 of that.
How are
And
you feeling with the methotrexate? Any like side effects, any nausea, or just kind of feeling crummy at all?
no, I don't have any of that.
Good.
But I mean, I is 15 milligrams of that I don't think is a large dose either, correct?
I'm not as familiar with methotrexate as I am with the prednisone. I took methotrexate for just a very short period of time, so um, I'm going to have to look and see what a typical dose is. It doesn't sound like it's a high dose, though, for sure.
Did you have a adverse reaction with that?
Yeah, I felt crummy. I just kind of there's a word doctors use for it, but it's just like malaise. Just just felt not myself. Didn't have a lot of energy. Didn't have a lot of motivation. Wasn't totally fatigued, but it wasn't feeling great either. So yeah, that was the way I felt with the methotrexate, and that's kind of typical when you look up the side effects. But I'm also hearing a lot more reports. In fact, Sarcoidosis News reported, and I talked about it in a previous podcast, that a significant number of doctors are now going to methotrexate as a first line of defense instead of prednisone for
Okay.
sarcoidosis and getting similar results. So I would say that if I had my choice between the methotrexate and the prednisone, I'd take the methotrexate for sure.
And did you have similar effects with prednisone?
With prednisone, I was taking 80 milligrams, so I had the big moon face. Anything that you have ever heard bad about prednisone happened to me, and it happened severely.
Right.
So, yeah. I gained all this weight. I didn't look like myself. We had to do a story on the news, tell people why, because I kept on doing the news, but my face was all puffed up with that moon face, and we had to explain it to people. We were getting all these emails. Oh, poor John, what's going on? And so, yeah, that's how it was. Plus, I was irritable. Beyond, like you just had I had a hair trigger. So I'd rather feel crummy on methotrexate than feel and look crummy and all the other side effects on prednisone if it worked. I didn't stay on methotrexate long enough to find out. I just felt that bad. I said, let's try something else. So then we went on to Imuran and Remicade and some other things, and now I'm on Humira and Imuran, and that's working for me. So I take both. And but I also
Oh,
did a
okay.
round of Cytoxin. I've talked a lot about this on the podcast. And so 2019 was the last year when I was out of it for most of the year. It was awful. It was awful.
And are these medications that you're on now, are these stuff that you can take long term?
According to my doctor, yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
there doesn't seem to be any long-term side effects from Imuran. Also, and then I take gabapentin, which there's been some research, which I just take. That's not a sarcoidosis drug, but because I have damage on my spinal cord, it gives me all this tingling, and the um, gabapentin cuts down on the buzzing. There's been some recent research that suggests that you get, as one doctor told me, you get stupid when you take it, and there could be early onset dementia later in life. But I would say that those tests are inconclusive, and pretty much any doctor I've talked to about it said just keep taking it, don't worry about it. So that's where I am with the current drugs that I'm taking. So I get blood tests every so often. They're monitoring for some different markers, but it's been a long time since anybody found anything alarming. So I think I'm good for now. Knock on wood.
Yeah, I'm my plan is to try the methotrexate for I don't know 6 months and then wean off it and see if my calcium comes back. Because he had said you're going to take it forever, but I'm I that doesn't sound good to me, and I would prefer to occasionally try to go off it and see what happens. Maybe the
Yep.
sarcoid goes dormant.
Yep. Right, exactly. And it can go dormant or you can knock it out. And one doctor said eventually, if you hit it hard enough, it just burns itself out. That was his term, burns itself out. I think he was trying to be nice to me and not use some big highfalutin medical term. But um, in my case, I'm just hoping that's what it is. In your case, I think you probably are too. I'm curious if you, especially being a fitness person, have tried altering your diet or anything like that now that you've got this diagnosis.
Yes, drastically after I listened to your podcast, one of your first podcasts with what was his name, Ryan Norenberg and Lindsay.
Lindsay,
Uh,
yeah, Lindsay was a dietitian who did. She helped me out a lot, and I probably did 3 or 4 podcasts with her, and then Brian's her husband, so he's a SARC patient. So yeah,
yeah, I really found his your talk with him very interesting. So I got into researching all inflammatory diets, and that's how I found actually that's how I found your podcast. Was someone else referenced your podcast? I forget which one I was listening to. That's how I came on yours, and then it's when I really started diving into the causes of sarcoidosis possibly and stuff like that. And a lot of it, it seems to me that a lot of it is environmental can be a big cause. And I certainly would fall into that category because for about 10 or 12 years, I was doing remodeling and rehabbing houses. So I was certainly
terrible. The
exposed
dust.
to, yeah, lots of dust and lots of silica and everything else that's in a house when you're demoing it. Um, but I stopped doing that in 2013, 2014. So I've had a good 10 years where I haven't been exposed to that because the environment I work in now is not is air quality wise is fine. Uh, but so it led me down this rabbit hole of like, environmental like particulate matter and radon and mold, and then you go down the whole line of like plastics and stuff and in the water and in your food and all the additives and the chemicals and stuff like that. And it was eye-opening and rather frightening too, because of the just the amount of stuff that everybody's exposed to. And there doesn't seem to be any way to really get around that or get out of that, because it's just everywhere. But I really started the diet in the end of August. And I cut bread out of my diet. So I mostly stopped eating gluten, anything with gluten in it, and started eating a lot of like blueberries and strawberries and kale and spinach and things that are anti-inflammatory, flaxseed with fiber and things like that. And I mean, the jury's still out on, is that going to get rid of my sarcoid? I don't know, but I'll be honest with you, it really makes you feel good when you eat better. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. I found the same thing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not perfect on it. Like, everybody you go out to dinner or whatever, you're traveling, you can't completely stay on that diet, but it definitely, I can't go back on it now because I feel too good on it. So, that's probably good thing for me, just long term for my health anyways.
Right.
Especially as I'm not getting any younger. So,
Yeah. Yeah. None of us are. Yeah. The diet was just one of the things that I attacked. I was grasping for anything that could stop this inflammation and could make this go away naturally. And so I'd started looking at dietary stuff, and then I found Lindsay, and I'm glad you brought her up because she really did a lot of podcasts with me and shared a lot of good information on this elimination diet is what she calls it. Um, and Ryan also, he was a big believer in it. And then omega-3 fatty acids was another thing. And so I take an omega-3 pill every day, vitamin supplement, fish oil. But whatever it is for me right now, fingers crossed it's working. So I'm just going to keep rolling. I did have a hard time staying on the diet just because of social pressures.
oh yeah, absolutely.
All
Yeah.
these grandkids and cupcakes and cookies and Papa, we want to go to Wendy's and some point you just got to eat. So I'm not as good as I was, but I did feel better when I was doing it for sure.
Well, I like to think if you can do it 80% of the time, you're ahead of the game,
Right?
and then forgive yourself for that 20% where you go off it.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you mentioned your wife. Do you have a family? Has this impacted your life at all?
No, it's just me and Heather, our
Okay.
dog. But no, it has had no. I mean, other than the stress of uh, that 4 or 5 months of uncertainty, where I thought, because they kept telling me maybe it's cancer. You have that on your mind, that uncertainty for a long period of time, and then I guess the uncertainty of just in general is the what I have is going to stay as it is, and I just have to live with this, or is it going to progress to get worse? I mean, nobody knows, but that is really the only uh, thing that I've had to deal with. I mean, there's been I have no other physical symptoms or limitations. So, I mean, I can't complain in listening to your podcast and hearing other people's uh, situations. I feel actually pretty lucky,
Yeah.
all things considered, especially in listening to what you've gone through, because mine sounds very, very easy compared to what you went through.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. Let's just keep it that way. But I appreciate you sharing your story because we haven't had anybody talk about this particular manifestation of the disease before, at least on the podcast. So thank you, Chris, for that. I have one further question because this is something I've been talking about in the last couple episodes and even had a chance to bring it up at the FSR board meeting recently in Chicago. And I want to know how well your care team worked together as a team? Were they talking to each other? Were they sharing information? Were they willing to share information? Were they willing to build off the other's findings? Did you have any issues with that at all?
I did not know. I can't. I have nothing bad to say about my all the doctors that I interacted with, and they did communicate with each other. Um, but they're all in the same system too, so that probably helps. But yeah, I had no problems with them at all, and they're all very open to listening to me and answering my questions and returning messages for me and responding to my current rheumatologist. He responds right away when I get a blood test. He sees the test results right away, and he'll respond to me right away, and will actually call me on the phone. Um, so I feel like I have got to roll the dice pretty good on the doctors that I have. Obviously, they're constrained by the system that they work in, uh, but I can't complain about them. And I think I'm lucky too that I have pretty good health insurance, so the costs have been fairly minimal for me. But then I haven't had some of the large costs and more invasive things that other people have. So I'm knock on wood, it's been is a less bad for me than it could be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're lucky. You're lucky. What hospital system are you working with?
I'm in Illinois Masonic,
Say
so
that
it's
again.
Illinois Masonic.
Okay. Got
So
it.
all my doctors are in that system there. So and I can't, as much as I don't want to go to the hospital, uh they were good when I was there with in the emergency room and that, and good when I went there for the biopsy too. I really have nothing to complain about. And all the tests I've had there too, I haven't had to wait long once I'm there or anything like that. So I don't have anything to complain about in that department.
Well, that's really good news. That is, other patients have had trouble, especially, of course, you're in Chicago, which is good because you have a lot of caregivers there. People who live in some of the outlying areas, not so close to a big city or a sarcoidosis clinic, will have a local doctor, and then they travel to the clinic, and getting the local doctor and the clinic doctors to talk to each other can sometimes be a struggle. But I'm really glad to hear that you didn't have that problem.
No, no, not so far. I've been any problems.
Yeah,
And
great. Great. Anything else you want to add?
no, just it's thank you for what you do, because it's given me a lot of information that I didn't have before, because there's not a ton of information even online for this disease, um and hearing what other people have, because I that information, there's seems to be scant a little of that out there.
Yeah, you're right. Well, you're welcome, and I'm glad sorry you're in our community, but I'm glad you found the podcast and that it helped a little bit.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, keep in touch, John. Thanks.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
So thanks to Chris for sharing his story. Hypercalcemia, another way that sarcoidosis can affect our bodies. Let's hope that the methotrexate works for him. That would be a lot better than going on prednisone, at least in my opinion. I didn't have a great trip with either one of them, not to use the word trip, to talk about something hallucinogenic or something like that, but my journey with either one was not good. But if methotrexate works for him and he doesn't have the side effects, then let's hope that works out. And this was a new one for me, by the way, hypercalcemia. Have you ever heard of it related to sarcoidosis? You, another patient with hypercalcemia? Let me know. you can ping me at carlinagency@gmail.com. And this is a good time to contact me if you'd like to share your story here on the podcast, or if you'd just like to just let me know what you think of the podcast. It's carlinagency@gmail.com. The official Sark Fighter song is Zombie by Mark Steyer and his band, the White Hot Lizards. Mark's a fellow Sark Fighter. He gave us an update in episode 118. I release this podcast every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty dog Dougal and my other wonderful puppy Shandy, my adorable rescue mutt, they're both in my office, and they make my life so much better. The backstory to the founding for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research is episode 11 with Andrea and Redding Wilson. Don't forget to follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Peloton is Sark Fighter, my cycling blog. Carlin the Cyclist has a section called Cycling with Sarcoidosis. And if you're new here and just trying to figure out what Sark is, listen to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart. My story is in episode 1. And if you want to see my story on television, there is a link in the show notes, or the description, as it were. Please send me an email. It's in the show notes as well, carlinagency@gmail.com. Till next time, keep fighting.
Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking,